So, when it comes to pro wrestling and sports entertainment, the saying of never say never gets thrown around a lot, especially recently. I mean, CM Punk basically really brought that saying into reality when he returned to WWE. Nobody thought that was ever going to happen, especially with the fact that within a year or so, when he was at AEW, he would badmouth them or take shots at them, even months prior to returning, but yet here he was at the end of War Games. So basically, when it comes to that saying of never say never, pretty much you got to take that very seriously. You got to take that saying very seriously and not just blow it off. I mean, with Mercedes Moné, never say never about her is definitely going to be very relevant. Because people say, oh, she'll never show up in AEW. She won't show up at AEW Dynamite Homecoming. She won't show up at TNA Hard to Kill. She won't show up at the Royal Rumble. The thing is, never say never. And when it comes to someone like her, that is very prominent, if you will. Very pivotal, I should say. And most importantly, when it comes to establishing partnerships internationally in pro wrestling and sports entertainment, never say never is definitely something that you need to take seriously as a saying. Because earlier this year, in fact, just at the beginning of the year last week, I should say, Charlie Dempsey, the son of William Regal, representing NXT, WWE NXT, by the way, went over to All Japan Pro Wrestling and competed for the Triple Crown Championship. And yes, he lost, but that, when you compare it to Nakamura going to Pro Wrestling Noah last year and fighting the great Muta during his retirement tour, pales in difference, if you will. It kind of differentiates between the two. And what I mean is the fact that when Muta and Nakamura were fighting or wrestled at Pro Wrestling Noah, it was being done because basically they wanted to get Great Muta in his retirement year into the WWE Hall of Fame. It wasn't because they wanted to establish a partnership with Pro Wrestling Noah, it's because they wanted Muta in the Hall of Fame. And you also got to remember at that time, Vince McMahon had bullied and slithered his way back into power, so he was the only one to be able to write off on it. And that's why it happened, because they got Great Muta in the Hall of Fame as a return. If they weren't going to get Muta in the Hall of Fame, there's no doubt Vince would have said, not going to happen, not going to send him, But basically with the agreement of Muta going to the Hall of Fame, it happened. But again, the difference between that and Dempsey going over to All Japan, the difference basically is Dempsey is just starting out. He's just starting out in WWE. He's part of the NXT, developmental system. He's just getting his foot, wet right now. He's part of a faction along with Drew Gulak. And basically, long story short, him showing up there, in All Japan, even though some people may feel it's not significant, it is. Because what that's doing is basically putting the first foundation, the first piece of a partnership internationally that WWE wants to do with other promotions. Now that we're in a new regime under Triple H, Paul Levesque, and Nick Khan as president in WWE, these kind of things that you didn't think were going to be possible, that you see in other places like AEW and TNA and so on, is now possible. Because again, the only time WWE would ever partner with other promotions is if it benefited them, or basically if they felt that promotion, could serve better as a developmental system to them than anything else, like how they treated Smoky Mountain and USWA. But long story short, this is not like that. This is more along the lines of, hey, if we can get certain talent from this promotion to show up on Raw, SmackDown, PLEs, what have you, it's good for them and it's good for us. It's kind of an equal, hopefully equal partnership. So when the saying of never say never comes into play with this kind of a scenario, again, it has to be taken very seriously. Because I heard what JD from NY206 of Off the Script, I heard what Salamonster Sounds Off has to say, or at least, originally said. I haven't heard what he had to say from his podcast yesterday, but I will eventually. And I kind of heard what Alex Hicks of Alex's World here on YouTube, just Alex, had to say. And I'm sure OTR Central would say something similar. But lot of them kind of have this belief that, with the reports going out that Triple H and Nick Khan are trying to establish a partnership with New Japan Pro Wrestling, that they believe there's no way that Tony Khan, the AEW owner, would allow it to happen, that he wouldn't even allow a phone call to take place. With all due respect to everybody that feels that way, let me kind of hit you with a bit of reality. Tony Khan does not own New Japan Pro Wrestling. Bushiroad owns New Japan Pro Wrestling. They're the ones that have the final say. And the guy that they chose to be the president, Hiroshi Tanahashi, who is the New Japan Pro Wrestling Television Champion, by the way, he also has the final say. And if Bushiroad and Tanahashi on their behalf decides, yeah, we want to partner with WWE, then they're going to do so. Whether Tony Khan likes it or not, they will do so. And let me explain something to you right now. New Japan has partnerships all over the world, with other major international promotions. AAA, they have a partnership with. CMLL, they have a partnership with. And by the way, speaking of those two, AAA and CMLL do not have the best, I guess you could say, respect for each other. They are not on friendly terms, we'll put it that way. They are basically like a mafia war just waiting to happen if you put them all in the same, room under the same roof. That's what you basically, have right there. You have basically World War III getting ready to explode between those two, promotions if you put them under the same roof. That's how bad the disrespect and, former relationship and hatred for each other, runs, apparently. But guess what? Both of them have a partnership with New Japan. And guess what New Japan does? They keep them separate. That's why at the first Forbidden Door, you couldn't have certain AAA stars that also worked for AEW performing, because you had certain CMLL stars on there. So to avoid any conflict, AEW kept them separate. New Japan keeps CMLL and AAA talent separate from each other. Even if they're on the same show, they keep them separate. So there's no real conflict, or anything. There's no real conflict. They let them go out, do their match, and they probably get them the hell out of there. End of story. New Japan could do the same thing with AEW and WWE. New Japan could one week say, okay, we're going to do, a New Japan show with AEW talent, and that's it. And then the following week, they could do a New Japan show with WWE talent, and that's it. Again, they do this with other promotions. That way there's no conflict. That way they could have equal partnerships with everybody they're partners with. They could give all the partners, equal time. They do this with even the UK promotions like Progress and Rev Pro, I should say. They do this. They're known to do this. So for anybody to come out and say, and I say this with all due respect to everybody that does wrestling, discussions, reports, reviews for a living or semi-living, I say this with all due respect, no offense, because I enjoy all the work. I support them and subscribe to them, and I highly recommend you do too. But I say this with all due respect, no offense. For anybody to think that New Japan cannot have a partnership with WWE simultaneously while having a partnership with AEW, whoever thinks that and believes that, that thought, that belief is asinine. It is asinine, and let me explain why. Because again, nobody except Bushiroad and the president they appointed for New Japan Pro Wrestling, Hiroshi Tanahashi, nobody but them have the final say in what happens. And if they want to tell Nick Khan and Paul Levesque, hey, we agree to a partnership with you, then they're going to do it. They're going to do it. If they say, yes, you got a deal, and we agree to a partnership with you, they're going to do it. And there's nothing Tony Khan can do. There's nothing Tony Khan can do. Could Tony Khan withdraw his partnership with them? From them? Absolutely. Absolutely, but he wouldn't, because he knows he knows that the partnership and the collaborated pay-per-view Forbidden Door makes too much money for him and them. So he's not going to give that up. What he'll do is he'll just be like, okay, fine, you want to partner with WWE, that's cool, but if you're willing to be able to keep us separate, give us 1 week, you give them 1 week, hey, no problem. Or hey, you give them one major show, you give us one major show, no problem. He'll be, Tony Khan, not wanting to lose that money, that revenue that Forbidden Door brings in, he'd be willing to, probably put his pride aside and say, okay, I agree to your terms. You give us 1 week, or you give us one event, you give them the others. And that's all, and that would be all, and that honestly would be all there is to it. That would be all there is to it. Basically the fact, long story short, that New Japan can can have partnerships with anybody they want. Again, it doesn't matter whether they're competitors, it doesn't matter whether or not they're competitors against each other or not. They can have partnerships. All parties can benefit, basically. All parties can benefit. So for anybody, again, I say this with all due respect, no offense to them, for anybody that believes, and believes in that thought, basically has that thought, and feels and believes that that's a reality, that this cannot happen, that Tony Khan or any other promoter that New Japan, partners with, company-wise and everything, if anybody thinks, that someone like TK can prevent this from happening, they need a reality check. They need to realize that thought is not, it's not fact, it's not true, and it's asinine, pretty much asinine. So the short end of it is this. The short end of it is this, and I know I'm sounding repetitive here. But the fact is, Bushiroad owns New Japan Pro Wrestling. They appointed Hiroshi Tanahashi as the president for New Japan. And they together have the final say in who they partner with. The same with Stardom, because WWE wants to start something with Stardom. They have the final say, not Tony Khan or anybody else, okay? I mean, think about it this way. JD, Salamonster, New Japan works with you guys, right? They work with House of Glory. Do you think Master P, the guy that runs and owns your company, do you think that the man that runs your company, real talk, the guy that runs your company, Master P, Mr. P, whatever you call him, do you think he has the power to prevent another New York-based or East Coast-based mid-indie or upper-indie promotion similar to House of Glory? Do you think he has the power to prevent New Japan from working with them? No, he doesn't. He doesn't have the power. And you know why? Because the only people that have the power to prevent any partnership from happening is Bushiroad and Hiroshi Tanahashi, who's the president. Those are the ones that have the say. If they want to say, no, we don't want to work with you guys because we have partnership with this company, then that's their decision. If they say, hey, we appreciate the offer, Nick Khan and Triple H, but we're partners right now with Tony Khan and AEW, so we have to decline, that's their decision. But if they say, hey, yeah, we'll partner with you, we like the idea to partner with you, gives our other talents here more exposure, more opportunity, bigger platform. Guess what? They're going to do it. Because they would see the fact that state-wise, they'd have not one, but two major platforms to work on, WWE and AEW, and by extension, TNA. So that, in a sense, is three major platforms that their talent can be showcased on. So for anybody that comes out and says that's not possible, that Tony Khan would not allow it to happen, not allow a phone call to even take place, they need to have a reality check. They do. They need to have a reality check, all right? Now, I'm not saying New Japan and WWE will have a partnership or a working relationship or anything like that. I'm not saying that. Again, they may decline it because of respect, out of respect, I should say. They may decline it out of respect for the other partnerships they have. But, that's what the saying of never say never in the wrestling business comes into play. Because just because you think it may not happen now, doesn't mean it won't. And if by the end of 2024, we find out that New Japan has partnerships with both AEW and WWE and TNA, then all I'm going to say is this, with all due respect to those that feel this would not happen, I hope you have a whole supply, a whole year's worth of supply of crow to eat. Because guess what? Solid Monster and JD, you guys made a bet. You said if CM Punk showed up, you'd eat crow and you wouldn't wear a hat during your review. Guess what? You had to live up to that bet, right? You had to live up to that bet. Well, guess what? You might have to live up to another bet. You may have to eat crow again because, like I said, it's not Tony Khan's call. It's Bushiroad's and, by extension, the president of New Japan Pro Wrestling, Hiroshi Tanahashi's call. They're the ones that have the final say, not TK. And they, by having the final say, can work something out to where they could give AEW a show in a week between, to where their talent can be showcased on. And they could do the same for WWE, and by extension, they can do the same for TNA. Wake up. Wake up and realize that it is possible. Again, I know people feel, and I tried to say this in the original recording, this is like the second or third one, but I said in the original recording of this that I get why people feel that this partnership shouldn't happen. That basically they feel that all WWE would be doing is using this partnership, this relationship, to establish, a foot in Japan to create an NXT Japan developmental system and promotion. And that's understandable to feel that way. But guess what? This is Triple H. Triple H has respect for wrestling. And he'll be the kind that will straight up tell someone like Bushiroad and Hiroshi Tanahashi, yes, we want a working relationship with you guys, but also we want to learn how to establish ourselves for an NXT Japan spinoff here in Japan. He'd be the kind to tell them up straight, like, hey, we're going to do this partnership because we also want to learn how things are done here in Japan from a pro wrestling standpoint, so that when they establish NXT Japan there, they won't be learning, as they go themselves. They'll already have an idea of how things have to be done. End of story. So he'll be the kind that would straight up tell them that. Let's not mince words there, because that's fact and that's truth. That's fact and truth. When it comes to wanting to expand, the WWE product globally in other, territories, in other countries. But in closing, like I said, never say never. That saying when it comes to pro wrestling and sports entertainment has never been so significant. It's never been so significant until now. So in my opinion, never say never. Because just because some people feel it's asinine, not asinine, but just because some people feel that someone like Tony Khan would prevent it from happening, that thought is asinine. That thought is, so dumbfounded, and I say that with all due respect, no offense. People need to wake up and realize things have changed. And they've changed for the better. So don't be surprised that before this year's out, maybe even post-WrestleMania, we get a report the WWE has partnered and now has a working relationship with New Japan, and that New Japan now has working relationships with 3 major promotions in the U.S., WWE, AEW, and TNA. Because again, it gives their talent that many people may not know about and only heard of, that gives their talent more exposure than they've ever had, because they have 3 major platforms statewide to do so on. But never say never, especially now. So in closing, let me know what your thoughts are, guys. Comment down below. Solomonster, JD, Alex, I would like to hear your thoughts. All due respect to you guys. You guys do great work. And anybody listening to this should check them out. At the YouTube channel, Solomonster Sounds Off, JD from NY206, and just Alex at Alex's World. Check their YouTube channels out, guys. You will appreciate what you see. You will enjoy what you see. But guys, I would like to hear from you. Greg Morgan, I would like to hear from you as well. Your thoughts on this and how you feel about it. Because again, we are in an age where never say never when it comes to pro wrestling and sports entertainment has never been so prominent than it ever has. So let me know what your thoughts are. And until next time, talk to y'all later.